beginning. We see successful platform businesses. We look at Uber, we look at Airbnb, and we think that, oh, this is so easy because you don't really need a lot of resources at the beginning. All you need to do is do a matchmaking between, say, drivers and passengers, or homes and tourists, etc. But it's actually quite tricky because at the beginning, just like matchmaking can be very powerful. You have both parties. When you have neither of them, it's actually really difficult to get started. So that's what we call the vicious cycle of platform starting.
Behind many of the world's biggest startup breakthroughs are people quietly studying how innovation actually works across industries, ecosystem, and even government policy. Today's guest is one of those thinkers. Welcome to another episode of School to Startup, brought to you by Tracxn, a private market intelligence platform that's been supporting the global university ecosystem for over 12 years. Through our university partnerships, we work with institutions driving innovation and entrepreneurship, and this series highlights the academic leaders making that happen. I'm Harish, your host today, and joining us is Professor Pinar, Professor of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Saïd Business School, University of Oxford. She's also Academic Director of Oxford Entrepreneurship Center. Pinar, wonderful to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So before we get into serious research, I want to ask this. You have spent years studying startups, founders, and innovation ecosystems. So tell me, after observing thousands of startups, do entrepreneurs actually get smarter over time, or do they just get better at explaining their mistakes?
I think that entrepreneurs do get smarter over time, and we can look at it both from an individual perspective and collectively. So individually, entrepreneurs get smarter as they go through ventures. So serial entrepreneurs are much smarter than first-time entrepreneurs, surely. They've learned from their mistakes, and we can see consistently that VCs really value that previous experience. And as you know, VCs invest into people. They don't invest into ideas. And so therefore, I would say that individually entrepreneurs get smarter. And in addition, today we live in a very interesting age where entrepreneurs are also getting smarter and better and more efficient through AI. AI tools for building your business are immense, and every single of my students already has a company, whereas 5 years ago, this wouldn't have been possible. And then, of course, collectively, we're getting smarter through the insights that we develop for entrepreneurship, by publicizing the best practices and the mistakes. And I'm happy to be contributing to that by writing the stories of particularly female founders that have been successful, and understanding what led them to success and what kind of gender barriers they've faced and how they've overcome them.
Very interesting. So let's start with your journey. You have worked across academia, startups, and global institutions, which is quite a unique combination. So what first drew you into studying entrepreneurship and innovation?
Well, my story actually starts when I was 6, because that's when my parents together started a venture in Istanbul, Turkey, where I was growing up. And this venture was the first venture, or the first private company to teach managers about leadership. And because there was no babysit and they had poured all their resources into this company, I literally grew up in this venture, like falling asleep on the sofa while they were still building the business or still teaching, leadership over the weekends. And over time, I mean, that kind of bug really stayed with me, that kind of energy of building something new. And, of course, that venture is the reason why I was able to go to school and, have food on the table. So I really understood the value of that company. And I'm today still involved with that company, actually. But that was when I knew that starting a new business was really something special. And then my journey took me to Stanford University on full scholarship, where I was, well, as an undergrad, you're not able to study entrepreneurship, but I was in Silicon Valley during the internet boom and the bust. And so that was a very special time to, where your friends could, some of them became millionaires and some of them lost everything. So it was a very special time to look at entrepreneurship. And then I stayed on and did my PhD with one of the world's experts on entrepreneurship, Kathleen Eisenhart, in the engineering school. And I was able to then focus on how entrepreneurs build ecosystems around them and kind of how do they manage these ecosystems with very limited resources inside the company, and how does successful ecosystem formation and management lead to success for a venture versus not.
Amazing. Before we continue, this is for our viewers. If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Tracxn YouTube channel for more conversations with leaders shaping the global startup ecosystem. Right. Your research often talks about innovation ecosystems rather than just individual startups. So from your perspective, what really makes a startup ecosystem successful? Is it capital policy, universities, or something else entirely?
Well, I think that universities matter as enablers. And so ecosystems really need to have enablers in order for a startup to be successful. So for instance, our entrepreneurship center at Saïd Business School helps entrepreneurs through accelerators, right? As well as venture builder programs. And this is not just for our students, but for anyone in the world. In addition, successful ecosystems that promote innovation need to have capital in them. So venture capital, but also just as importantly, and perhaps more importantly, angel investors. So exposure to angel investors is very important. And in the UK, for instance, the UK Business Angels Association is very important for this, for the UK innovation ecosystem. And then we also need corporations because they will come in either as clients, but they can also come in as investors. And that kind of industry connection is very important, both for the development of the product for the venture, but also then to be able to reach their first clients, because venture capitalists usually don't want to give money, especially at later stages, unless the venture has already had a few clients, so they can prove that somebody in the market wants this, right?
Right. Interesting. So many startups today don't just build products, right? They build platforms and ecosystem. From your research, what do founders often misunderstand about building the platform businesses?
Well, platform businesses are very tricky. We see successful platform businesses. We look at Uber, we look at Airbnb, and we think that, oh, this is so easy because you don't really need a lot of resources at the beginning. All you need to do is do a matchmaking between, say, drivers and passengers, or homes and tourists, etc. But it's actually quite tricky because at the beginning, just like matchmaking can be very powerful. You have both parties. When you have neither of them, it's actually really difficult to get started. So that's what we call the vicious cycle of platform starting. And what a lot of entrepreneurs don't get is just how much thought, design, and actually financial resources are needed at that stage. Because sometimes you need to give away money to invite people to join your platform. Or in Uber's case, they would give away smartphones because drivers wouldn't be able to use the app without a smartphone. This was, of course, 10 years ago. And today, what they do is, they say your first 100 rides are commission free, 1,000 rides are commission free, etc. And similarly, if you want a client to join a financial platform, you would put a few pounds into their account there. And so you do need resources because you need to do bulk buying of customers, and that's actually quite important to be able to make sure that you have critical mass and you can do matchmaking. Because imagine a party that you want to throw and you want people to have a really good time. If some of the really important people, critical people, show up all at different times, then the party will never get going. They need to come to the party all at the same time and be there at the same time. And the problem with platforms or getting platforms started is exactly that. You need to have critical mass on both sides, or however sides you have, in order to start the matchmaking and start what we call the network effects.
Very interesting. And talking about Oxford has produced some incredible startups. From your experience at Oxford Entrepreneurship Center, what are universities doing particularly well when it comes to supporting entrepreneurship? And what do you think they could still improve?
So I think that supporting entrepreneurship is an endless effort. The more resources we have, the more we can do. I would love to have so many sponsorships from corporations and venture capital firms that I can bring startups in and then, do accelerators for them for free, for instance, because we can really see how startups can improve. And some of them come from overseas, and then they need to understand the UK market. And some of them are from here, but they just need exposure to the right network and to be able to work with mentors and to improve the idea. So that itself is endless. Like I can never say the job is done. And then my personal passion, as I said at the beginning, is to promote female entrepreneurship. And there, I think what we need is female role models. We need to tell the stories of females who have made it and the companies that they've started and the impact that those companies have had in order to change the mindset of both current and future investors and entrepreneurs, such that females don't face such gender biases when it comes to fundraising or when it comes to working with clients. There's still quite a lot to do in that space.
Interesting. You've also studied innovation ecosystems across industries. So this might be an unfair question. If you had to predict, where will the next big startup wave come from? A university lab, a student, dorm room, or someone quitting their corporate job at 2 a.m.?
Well, so I do a lot of work in AI, and one of my specialties is fintech. But I would say that in terms of sector, life sciences and kind of health, fitness, that area is going to experience the next boom. It already is experiencing the next boom, but that's going to keep going. Personalized medicine, health apps and wearables that not just track our sleep, that's the simplest one, but also things like hormones and heart health. And the world is your oyster. There's just so much that still can be done, and there's so many amazing startups working on them. And so I would say that the medical science is going to experience the next boom. And my prediction is that a good chunk of those startups are going to come from universities because it's a very knowledge intensive field, and so it's very difficult for someone to get up and say, I'm going to build a medical venture, because you need a lab, and labs are difficult to build. You need lots of money, you need space, etc.
Interesting. And from everything you have seen in your research, what separates students who actually build successful startups from those who simply talk about it?
Well, one of the, this is not a secret anymore. One of the most important traits for an entrepreneur is resilience, not giving up. And resilience typically comes from passion. Like you really you really need to have a problem that you in the world that you really care about, that you want to solve. Typically, entrepreneurs that have a solution and are looking for a problem are the ones that fail, because they're trying to make money in a sense. And I don't want to overgeneralize, but like, if they don't feel passionate about the problem, then they won't stay day and night. They will look for the next money. And so I would say that it's that resilience that typically comes at least partially from passion, and then the second part is network, and being in the right place in the right time. And we've seen that in Silicon Valley, we see that in London, and that's why building international networks and making sure that entrepreneurs from the Middle East, from India, from Africa can come to Oxford or to London and be part of that network is extremely important.
Right, amazing. And finally, for students, researchers, and aspiring founders watching this episode, what is one mindset shift that could help them think differently about innovation and entrepreneurship?
Let me think about that a little bit. Mindset shift. I would say that entrepreneurs are generally kind of determined, and they understand that they can learn in schools, and that's one of the things. So when we start to teach entrepreneurship, one of the first things we say in the classroom is, well, yes, there are entrepreneurship traits, like for instance, interestingly, a lot of traits that go with ADHD or bipolar syndrome, like that manic energy that people have, or that drive, hyper focus that ADHD people have. Those are actually good traits for entrepreneurship, interestingly. But entrepreneurship can absolutely be learned, because there are many mistakes that you will make which you wouldn't make if you were to really understand what that journey looks like, and what the setbacks will be, and when should you bootstrap, and when should you go for investment. And one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs say is that I waited too long to get investors, and because that they thought that investors meant money, but investors mean network. And so you need investors in order to open doors for you, in order to meet your next client. And those are some of the things that entrepreneurs sometimes don't get.
Amazing. Professor Pinar, this has been a fascinating conversation. Today, we explored how innovation doesn't happen in isolation. It happens through ecosystem, collaboration, network, and the ability to adapt to change. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and for being part of this episode of School to Startup.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Arish.